Um, so welcome to the third Chiron virtual masterclass on illuminated
Yeah.
nativity. In previous years, we discussed donkeys in the nativity as a kind of um, essential animal, and then riding on the back of the donkey and Mary's riding practices and the way she's depicted side saddle in kind of elite tech, non-elite tech. And today we are going to discuss the three kings and their horses and uh, other different mounts which are there. But we will start with a talk by Jurg Gassmann, who is going to discuss the three kings of the Magi and why they're known under different names. Okay, so the floor is to you, Jurg.
Yeah, thank you. I am just going to try and find my slides. Yes, here we are. I'm just opening this.
So
Okay. So now what can you see?
we can see it in kind of working mode, not
Yeah, okay.
presentation mode.
I shall then do
Do slideshow.
slideshow, play from start. There we go. Can you are now seeing the
It's very
you're
interesting because we see it in presentation mode from
Yeah,
your
yeah, yeah.
computer.
Yeah. You're seeing swap. Okay. Now you see the
Yeah, that's
just the
perfect.
okay. Okay. Excellent. So the Holy Three Kings. Uh if you are Anglophone, you know them as the Magi, but in most of Europe, they're known as the Holy Three Kings. Why? All will be revealed. So the origin, where does the concept come from? It comes from the Gospel of Matthew. It is only in the Gospel of Matthew. And in the Gospel of Matthew, it says, "Idou magoi apo anatolon paregeneto este Hierusalima." So, out of the east, apo anatolon, uh, came Magi who went towards Jerusalem. This is all it says, right? So, magoi, first of all, it says Magi. It definitely does not say kings. It does not say basileus or anything like that. And they are in the plural. This is also important, as will be revealed. And they came out of these. So this is all we know. We do not know how many. The number three comes from the fact that they brought three presents, but nowhere in the scripture does it say how many there were. I have here presented an altarpiece by Hans Baldung, and here you can see one of the typical presentations of the Magi. Here they're not necessarily presented as kings, but you can see one is young, one is in middle age, and the other is old. This is one of the symbolisms of the Magi. The other symbolism of the Magi is they represent the three known continents. They represent the continents of Africa, of Europe, and Asia. And in later presentations, sometimes there is a Chinaman presented as one of the Magi. But the image of one of the three Magi or kings as a black person, this persists during the Middle Ages. It doesn't change. So why were they called kings outside the Anglo-Saxon world? So spoiler alert here. As I said, Matthew doesn't say how many they were, and they were never canonized. So the fact that they are called the Holy Three Kings is again an invention. They were never canonized. So fast forward to the 12th century, or backwards to the 12th century. So here we have, in the image, we have the Basilica of Santo Storgio in Milan. So the relics of the three Magi, as they were presented at the time, were found by the mother of Emperor Constantine in the 4th century. She found lots of relics. She found the Holy Lance and lots of other things. So she was a prolific finder of relics. But she found the grave of the three Magi on her trip to Jerusalem, and she had them first transferred to Constantinople. And then from there, already in the 4th century, they were taken to Milan. Milan was an extremely important city in the Roman Empire. It was one of the military capitals of the Roman Empire. And they were buried here at the cathedral, at the Basilica of Santo Storgio, which is still there. You can go to the Basilica, and they have sort of a display where it says, empty tomb, this is where the three Magi were buried. So investiture struggle. Now we're in the 11th and 12th century in medieval Europe, Holy Roman Empire, and the Pope claims dominance over the Holy Roman Emperor. So if you're familiar with the two swords theory, this is developed from what happened in the Gardens of Gethsemane. There were two swords, and one sword is the spiritual sword, which is given to the Pope, and the other is a secular sword, which is given to the Emperor. And these are the two essential offices of the Holy Roman Empire. And now the Pope is arguing that rather the Pope has preeminence over the Emperor, whereas the previous doctrine was they are co-equal in their closeness. They are both vicars of God in this earth. It is simply that they have different functions. And now the Pope is saying, no, I am the preeminent vicar of God, and the Emperor is just subordinate to the Pope. Now enter Reinhard von Dassel. He's the Archbishop of Cologne, the Chancellor of the Roman Emperor Frederick I Barbarossa. This is toward the end of the 12th century. And Barbarossa has lots of military disputes with the northern Italian cities. He loses a decisive battle against northern Italian cities. But in the course of these military ventures in northern Italy, his Chancellor Reinhard von Dassel, who's an extremely interesting character, he comes to Milan, he comes to Santo Storgio, he sees this tomb of the three Magi, as they were still known then, and he decides that these were not just Magi, they were actually kings. There are three skeletons. He has them exhumed. He has them taken to Cologne. And the reason, what he tries to, what he insinuates is that these three skeletons, I'll go on to the next slide. Here on the picture, you see the shrine of the Holy Three Kings in Cologne Cathedral. So it's very impressive artwork, and it's still there. So Reinhard had them declared kings. One of the reasons why he removed these relics to Cologne is that there were no major relics, or that is, no major pilgrimage destination north of the Alps before then. All the pilgrimage destinations were south of the Alps. So Santiago de Compostela, it is Rome, it is Jerusalem, it is all the various locations in what is today Turkey, West Asia, but nothing north of the Alps. So by taking these relics to Cologne, here now is a major attraction for pilgrimages north of the Alps. But this is not the main political reason. The main political reason is by arguing that they were kings, he is arguing that secular rulers were the first to pay homage to the Savior. The Pope was nowhere around. And this is historical fact. Pope is the papacy is derived from Saint Peter, who was one of the apostles. So this is obviously much later in Jesus's life that the apostles show up. So here he's saying the secular rulers are much closer to Christ because they were there at his birth. They recognized his greatness at his birth before the popes were even conceived of. And so to argue that the Pope has preeminence over the secular rulers is not just wrong. In fact, it is religiously wrong. It is politically unacceptable to argue that. The holiness of the secular rulers cannot be questioned. So this was part of the argument, and again, the symbolism of the three kings representing the three continents means that the entire earth, everybody, acknowledged the preeminence of Jesus. But it doesn't end there. The next round comes in politics. And here, this is an image from the Très Richeur du Duc de Berry. And you again see the imagery. You see up in the upper right, a young king. That is the French king, Charles the Fifth or something like that. The one on the left, I'm not sure about, but the one in below is the Emperor of Byzantium, one of the Paleologues, who was doing a state visit to France in the early 15th century. This is where the image is taken from. You can see in the background is Paris, and the Byzantine emperor was trying to raise political support for a defense of Constantinople, which was not forthcoming. So now it becomes a three-way struggle. It's not just a struggle between emperor and pope. The kings come in. And the kings, especially the French king, argue the following. The pope and the emperor are historical artifacts. There was a time where there was no pope and no emperor. Obviously, at the time of Jesus' birth, there was no pope. That is historical fact. There was an emperor. The emperor was in Rome. But it's very clear that whoever visited Jesus was not the emperor. First of all, it clearly was not the historical emperor, was not Augustus, who was emperor at the time, but it cannot even be argued that it was the real emperor of the world, because there were at least two of them. There was a plural, so it can't have been one. And there can only be one emperor. So they argued that popes and emperors are historical artifacts. There was a time where there was no emperor. There was a time where there's no pope, that is not disputed, but there was also a time where there was no emperor. But there was always a time where there were kings. Kings eternally predate the both king and emperor. Therefore, it is the kings, not the pope or the emperor, who are closest to Jesus and in divine favor. And this is part of the phrase divine right of kings and Dei gratia rex and all that sort of thing. It's a complete subversion of the feudal order. But this is part of the argument for the divine right of kings, that the kings are more closely associated, kings as a class are more closely associated to Jesus and are more sacral than either the Pope or the Emperor because of this uh, eternal existence of kingship and the fact that the kings were the first to pay homage to Christ. And this is why you see the uh, the Magi represented as kings, not just in the Holy Roman Empire, but also in jurisdictions that were inimical to the Holy Roman Empire, like France, which completely rejected the authority of the emperor, but they still see the Magi as kings, and this is because of this fifth slide that I show. And that is sort of a potted version of this history. So happy to discuss.
Well, thank you very much, Jurg. That's very interesting. The story I didn't know about. So, any comments, questions to the speaker? Mm. So the miniatures which I'm going to show, they kind of go into this story of mm, how do I say it, of there being kings, not just some sorts of magi. The way Merlin is a kind of magician, supernatural person in medieval culture and medieval romance, but they are kings, and yes, they're depicted with crowns and so on and so forth. But we are going also to look outside of Europe with our slides so we can see if it changes there or if it doesn't change there. Yeah, it's a lot of information which I never thought about. Uh, I'm just wondering why then the kings should be closer to Jesus than, for example, shepherds, because the shepherds were there first, and the donkey was there before the shepherds, so the
they
donkeys should be closer.
they couldn't pay for the scribes and illustrators.
Yeah, and it's also
No,
interesting. Yeah,
but
uh,
now we're talking Basilius of Padua, so like, we could continue.
it's
But no,
also
I mean,
very interesting that they have kind of this archaeology effort, exhuming the land, the cross, making the first reconstruction experiments to find which was the cross on which Jesus
yeah.
was crucified, and kind of course, finding the one. Yeah, so kind of Saint Helena should be the patron saint of all archaeologists. She did a lot of
Yeah, I mean,
archaeology.
the early Templars were digging around the mount, the Temple Mount, uncovering tunnels and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
yes, they were quite curious.
Okay. Right. So if people don't have questions at this point, maybe they will have questions later. I'll share my slides, and yeah, everybody is welcome to stop me at any time, to comment, ask questions. What I was trying to do is my slides trying to kind of it's impossible to be representative and it's impossible to cover everything, right? Um, so just my selection is quite arbitrary, I'll be honest. I just selected the ones which I liked. And
No, what you circulated was quite representative, I thought.
yeah, I also tried to kind of cover different ages, different
Yeah,
periods,
yeah,
and also different parts of the page in which the three kings would appear.
yeah.
Um,
So
and
this is one of the few, this carol is one of the few instances where in English they're referred to as kings.
yeah, yeah, it's kind of interesting as well. Yeah, so I was limiting my choice only to kind of two-dimensional art. They certainly appear in sculpture a lot, and your example from Cologne is something I didn't know about, but probably I would love to look at it in closer detail. There must be um, represented there in uh, various ways. Okay, so everybody can see my slide now, yeah? Yes? No? Okay. If people cannot see anything, just let me know. And the slide should now change to the second slide. So that's the earliest image I included here. And I decided to start with illuminated initials. So this is an early example from Moselle, France, from the 9th century. It's Carolingian Renaissance. And yeah,
Yeah,
it shows.
here they're not shown as kings, right? They don't have crowns.
No, they just shown as men, and
Mhm.
yeah, they're certainly bringing gifts. Okay, wait a second. I'll have a pointer. So they're bringing gifts here. They're also answering before Herod, and they're traveling. So don't see many details of horses, but you can see by the ruler it's a very small initial. So yeah, they are represented with ordinary headdresses. Um, and the horses are just three different little horses, two gray horses, one beige sort of horse. The middle horse could be actually a mule because it's got slightly longer ears, but yeah, I'm not going to read too much into this slide because it's so small, this miniature. But if we go on, um, here it's only history. So somewhere in France, Chartres, Paris, Orléans, we don't know. And it's interesting, they're showing only one horse out of those kings. It probably is a challenge to put them all into one initial, one round frame. And here again, they don't really appear as kings. We don't see the crowns. Um,
Are
and
two of them riding on one horse?
they should have different horses.
Yeah.
Um, just the third horse is not visible anywhere. We don't see even the legs of it, actually.
Mhm.
Um, Again, it would be a challenge to have too many legs. And one of the images I chose it when I was copying it, I just realized that it's very hard to distinguish which legs are which. I also like the fact that they are blue horses, right? So,
Yeah, can I just quickly interrupt? Just
yeah,
for the narrative, this is interesting because the investiture struggle, the struggle between the emperor and the pope, started in the last years of the 12th century.
yeah,
So here in the early 13th century, we're in the middle of the investiture struggle, the struggle between emperor and pope. The argument that the kings made really started at the end of the 13th century and came with a vengeance at the beginning of the 14th century. So if this is France, France would not have had a political reason to show them as kings at this time, because at this time, the French king was not involved in the controversy. It was only at the end of the century and beginning of the 14th century that the kings began to make their argument based on the closeness to Jesus. So that to me, this is very interesting from a timing point of view. I agree. They're not depicted as kings, and to me, this is the reason why a French manuscript, which if it were a century later, would nearly certainly, if you look at the Trésor du Duc de Berry, they're definitely kings.
Okay, so we are going to look at some example from around the same time. We'll see what
I hope
uh,
I'm right.
yeah, what we will see here. So from the point of view of equestrian tech. You can see the spurs, you can see he's got a curb bit. So basically they're made of statues. Maybe not kings, but they're not just shepherds or something. They are riding on high quality horses. And the blue horse in front, it's definitely depicted in a way that well-bred horses were depicted. High head carriage and all this kind of very compact body. Okay, let's go on. Okay. And now we are into the 15th century, and again, illuminated initial. And well, here they don't. Okay, maybe they do have crowns actually. If this is the same man over there, um, they do appear as kind of not just some men from the east. They have retinue with dromedaries, with one dromedary at least. Again, the color scheme of the horses, they have two gray horses, one kind of light brown horse, and the horse tech is definitely high status. It's red, it's got all these buckles. And the white horse of the older king, it's an ambling horse. So amblers are again high status horses. They choose horses for traveling, like the wife of Bath is traveling with an ambler. They also have here they have head carriage. The heads are on the vertical, which is again another sign that they are kind of not just competent riders, but also they have well-trained horses. They can afford well-trained horses. And you can see that people at the time, they knew how to depict snaffle bits because the dromedary has a snaffle. I'm just wondering if how well they knew about the riding of dromedaries. Doesn't appear they have any rider on it. Yeah. You can do all sorts of things. Okay, now we are back to the 11th century, and that's a different kind of place on the page. It's the top of the page initial. It's Romanesque. You can see it from the arches. It's kind of very Romanesque arrangement of the miniatures. We have three arches and we have three kings, each king for an arch. There are similar arrangements for kind of different figures on the page. For example, the apostles, the evangelists, they can also be depicted in these arches. And here, definitely, they are just three men who are looking at the star, not kings. Um, um, it's very interesting to see that they have such small horses, almost like ponies, feet are dragging, almost touching the ground. So one explanation could be they still need to fit it into the arch, into the limited space.
Yeah, yeah.
But you will see that apart from those later images, they don't have huge horses, apart from those images which are dated to the 15th century, when we have bigger horses, and all the early images, they're basically ponies. And I don't see any reason why we should kind of suppose that artists didn't know how to draw big horses if big horses existed. They certainly knew how to draw dromedaries and all kind of other bigger animals, even there with them. Yeah, so that's another nice image where they're riding as a group. Here they're riding sort of separately. Here we
Can
go.
I ask about the middle horse?
Yes, which
There's something, the middle one under the red arch. Is there something coming out from the horse's mouth, or is it just something reflecting through the?
That's a good question. But there should be something, because if you look at the right horse, There is something, but I don't think it's coming from the mouth.
Ah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think it could be something on the horse's neck, for example, some kind of uh, ornament hanging from the neck. And I have some examples from Eastern Europe, from Armenia, where they have similar decorations on the horse's neck. So I'm not sure if it's the same, but maybe the illuminators knew that horses in the East had something around their neck, and it was their
Mm-hmm.
idea to depict it. Um,
Yeah.
I haven't seen this in Western illumination. Have any ideas?
I myself don't know.
No,
But
that's
yeah,
that's
it
really
caught my
interesting.
eye.
You can look at them and you see all sorts of details. That's why
Yeah.
I like drawing them as well, because once you start drawing them and copying them, you notice things which by just looking you don't necessarily notice, and you start asking questions.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay.
Here we go. It's a mappa mundi, a map of the world. You can see it's sort of big map, and the three kings are just very tiny guys on this map. And here they're definitely kings. It's 14th century, so they're definitely kings. Um, so because it's such a small detail, so the quality isn't perfect, but you can Google it up and then look at all those other different things on the Mappa Mundi. You have an elephant there, just pretty tiny elephant. Again, some group of travelers with camels, and you can kind of turn it around and see what happens. Um, what I like about this image is that they're depicted as a group, and it's gets into a stable motif in the medieval illumination, that they're shown as a group, one after the other, traveling together. Um, Here we definitely see that they're also kind of they're individualized. They're different ages. Um, they have different appearances. The one in the middle has a bigger nose, for example. The one on the left is probably younger. His hair is darker.
Mm.
I think so. What I liked about it most is the color of their horses. So we have
Yeah.
not just a dappled gray horse, but we have a dappled pink horse and a dappled beige horse. Um, let's put it this way. Um, Now, until recently, I didn't pay too much attention, but I have found that there were two similar depictions of dappled horses, which are not dappled gray, but dappled, you can say chestnut or dappled bay, and apparently it could appear in horses, this dappled color. Um, so one possibility is that when they are changing their coat, if the horse is kind of very well fed, it's got all the vitamin supplements, and especially if it has high or excessive calcium and iron, sometimes you will see dapples. And in some horses, they could be quite prominent. So one possibility I'm thinking about that these dappled horses, they are shown as dappled because this is one sign that they are well fed, well cared for. Kind of similar to modern sports horses, which have got all the best mueslis and everything, whether it's good for them or not. Um, so if people see dappled horses and they're not just dappled gray, you can make a note of it. I haven't really seen many of them actually. Um, Once I saw in a Swedish tapestry, and another is um, the entry, I think, of King Edward to London. Um, that's in Miriam's book, Working Horses in London. Uh, yeah, so, and here are three of them. Um, I don't know what to make of the pinkish sort of horse. Definitely, it's not gray. Could be some other color. Um, do you have any possibilities? Um, but I don't really want to say that people didn't know about horse colors, because illuminators should know about these things. They should be depicting something uh, which is recognizable to them. Okay, they can depict a fancy elephant because their readers wouldn't know about elephants, but they cannot depict a horse which doesn't look like a horse because everybody will recognize it. What kind of thing is that? Um, yeah, and here again we have three kings. They're kind of, hey, you go there. There seem to be shepherds who are showing that, yeah, hey, here you go. And that's the Tamos Hours. She's a lovely manuscript with lots of miniatures. Um, Definitely kings. Three horses. They're very emotional. You can see all these emotions finally depicted. And something about the illuminator of the Tamos Hours, he liked horses which are very lean, with very lean necks. Because last year we were talking about one of the donkeys from the Tamos Hours, a donkey bearing uh, Mary, and was also depicted as a creature with a very thin neck. Um, mm,
And it seems that here they have clearly depicted that the horses are stallions,
yes.
or yeah, but because on previous images there was no such indication, unless they were deliberately meant to be mares, but
I think they just didn't really, yeah, didn't emphasize that.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
here, yes, I was also going to say that, um, yeah, they were 100% stallion, and again, that's something you would see associated with elite riders, even if in reality they didn't always ride stallions. There were cases when riding geldings was accepted, and if in dire straits they couldn't even ride mares, although this wasn't normal for Western rulers. Depicting riders on stallions was a clear indication that yes, they're men, not just some men, they're elite men who can manage stallions, right? So if they're elderly or infirm, then they may not be riding stallions. But these guys, despite the fact that one of them is quite old, basically the older king, he is not shown on a stallion. The horse has different leg position, so here the illuminator isn't stressing this fact. Um, so, but the younger kings, they definitely have stallions. Here we go. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Come on. No. Okay. And that's 15th century. And the first the mount in front is it's clearly a horse, and the other two look to me very much like mules because they have longer ears. This one has the gray horse has ears which are like very small, very pointy, very fine, and the other animals, the other mounts has have longer ears, and also this by animal has different neck position, so I think they're supposed to be mules. But no, not just some mules, high status mules, because they have curb bits. Well, this one has a curb bit. We cannot really say anything about the last one. It could be donkey ears, or it could be mule ears, or it could be a bunny rabbit. Who knows? Um, but the one in front, it's again an ambling horse. Um, looks like a very well-bred horse. Its head is behind the vertical line over here, which is today it is associated with like overflexion roll curve, but there have been studies indicating that in the Middle Ages, depicting horses with this head position was a sign of uh, the sign that the rider is a top class rider. Let's put it this way, or at least an elite rider. So that's something positive. Although today, if you look at the dressage competitions, you would also see a lot of overbent horses which are ridden by elite riders. So who knows? Um, right. Yeah. So again, kind of red tag with a lot of gold on it, and also the mule has gold on his bridle, and the three kings are discussing something. Uh,
Can
yes.
I ask about the mules?
Yes.
So were mules, they're clearly quite common on the different images, but were they actually animals that kings would have been riding?
In Spain, the nobility could ride mules for traveling, because if they were traveling over mountains, it was just the only sensible choice.
Mm.
Even today, mules are used for traveling in mountainous areas, especially like very narrow paths which are dangerous. So mules are much better than horses at keeping not just their balance, but also their wits about. If they're sliding down, horses could panic, mules don't panic. Um, so uh, would so kings could ride mules for traveling. It's very uncommon to have them depicted as riding mules, because mules are usually represent apart from Spain, in other parts of Europe, mules are associated with either ladies or religious people or servants. But they could be quite expensive. And apparently, it's not easy to breed a mule. So it's kind of
Just
complicated. Yeah.
if I could point out in the Templar rule, uh, the higher you rise in the Templar order, the more horses you're allowed. And at the so if you're just a brother, you have one horse. If you're slightly higher, you have two horses. If you have three or four horses, one of those horses could be a mule.
Okay. Yeah. So I didn't know that. Yeah. So I don't know why they depicted riding mules, but it's not unrealistic. And towards the 15th century, illuminators were kind of already tending to depict sometimes not just the ideal, but also um, some kind of to be more realistic, okay, to depict reality as it was.
Mhm.
Um, so could be a mule. Um, let's go on. And here is a somewhat early Italian manuscript. This is the middle of the page, so it's a very big illumination, which right in the middle. Um, and I included the lower part, which has also these seem to be mules, but they're pack animals. Or they could be donkeys, but looking at their tails, they could actually seem to be mules. And interestingly, these pack animals, they don't have any tag, they don't have halters, they don't have bridles, they're just going on. So liberty work in modern terms. Um, but yeah, occasionally you can see donkeys which are just following as part of the baggage train. They're following other riders, and apparently they didn't always need to be led. They could just go. And we've got some soldiers, so could be escort soldiers, could be Herod soldiers, who knows? Um, who are following. And the three kings, again, one of them has a dappled horse, and also one of the soldiers has a dappled horse, but they're dappled gray horses, it seems. There is one silver gray horse and one, probably it's a bay horse. And again, two of them are definitely stallions. Not sure about the gray horse in the middle. And the soldiers also have stallions. And the mules are also stallions, so all of them are stoned horses, equids. Okay. Regarding the head position, you can see that they were in curb bits, and here the horse's mouths are open, so this could be caused by the action of a rather harsh bit. Today, again, it's regarded as unethical, as indications that horse is uncomfortable. But then in the Middle Ages, and early modern depictions, it's very common for elite horses to appear with open mouths. So, actually, very interestingly, the mules also have open mouths, even if they don't have any bridles. One of them seems to be eating along the way. Yeah. So here we go. And this motif of three riders were riding one after the other, the horses depicted in slightly different attitudes, with different head positions. It appears also in other images. Here is that's actually a companion piece to the previous one. That's another page. So they're kind of turning over around another mountain, and going forward. So again, when I was kind of copying this image, I also became aware of the fact that the tech is depicted in very fine detail. So you can have this curb bar under the horse's chin. And here the illuminator seems to have forgotten the reins, or they're depicted in a very fine way and got rubbed. To me, this horse doesn't seem to have reins. And here, yeah, they're depicted in a very fine way, but not really visible. And a lot of legs. You can get confused when you have all these legs around. So shows that the illuminator knew what he was doing. So here we go. And again, 15th century. So I wanted to show the entire page so you can see that this is a religious manuscript, Hora Diusum Parisiensem, so Paris, obviously. And the three kings, they are shown in two places. So I think these are the three kings as well on the left, although they have some gray horns. And here they again kind of talking with each other, maybe deciding where to go next. And again, we have a pink horse. After all these centuries, we still have the pink horse. So clearly, it is a color the audience would recognize. We have a silver gray horse and we have a dark gray horse. So people probably know, if they're familiar with horses, that the gray horses, they become lighter with age. So the lighter the horse, the older it is, the more experienced, and the darker it is, the less experienced it is. And gray is the only color which changes with age in a horse. The other colors, they don't really change. And yes, there is another little roundel the three kings arriving. So this could be a very nice page to just look into in detail. And yeah, so the three kings presenting their gifts. And in the previous years, we talked about the symbolism of this shadow cave, and how some of them depict and reflect real structures which could have been used as shelters for animals, and some of them are clearly fantastic. This is kind of realistic, and you can see the donkey and the ox who have this feeder. Um, and yeah, very interested in what's happening, who invaded their private shelter. Here we go. And now we are going away from Europe, and we are going into Armenia. So the monastery of Saint Gamaliel in what is now Turkey, 14th century. The style is very different. Again, I have included the entire page where you can see the donkey and the ox. The ox seems to be very interested in the baby, and they're both interested. Early contact with the baby. And the horses, unfortunately, they are in the bottom part. They're not really visible, but they just wonderful horses. I love them so much. They remind me of some cartoon characters. Again, they seem to be three different colors. You cannot really see the horse which is at the back, but its mane is different from the other horse on the left. So they seem to be different colors. And here is a chestnut horse, probably, or a bay horse. So chestnut should have a mane which is also the same color as the body, and bay horse would have a black mane, black tail, depending on how you view it. And they have saddles, which the saddle is clearly of a different construction from those we saw in European illuminations. Also, bridles seem to be different. They have different nose bands, which are quite prominent. Seem to be like nose bands are not lying flat on the mouth, and don't really see the beads here. So it's kind of interesting and different way of depicting horse tech. You can also see that the Magi, they can have non-European features as well. So they change in appearance. But again, we have one older man, one younger man, and one middle-aged man. They just have different face features. As are all the other participants in this festive event. And the last one is an Ethiopian manuscript from the 15th century. So we saw some European 15th century manuscripts, and that's here, two-page manuscript. So we see shepherds here at the bottom. Again, the ox and the donkey. Okay, this animal is a donkey, a striped donkey. And that's a very emaciated ox, it seems. And here are the three horses. They have their reins put over the saddle, the front bow of the saddle, and they have something on their neck. So you asking me about this thing hanging from the neck. So here horses have something on their neck, which isn't part of the bride, which may be part of the bridle, but this here, it looks like a martingale. And also there are these things around their neck, their legs. Could this be the saddle girls? Could be the second saddle girls. It's just depicted in a very peculiar way. Again, you can see that the tech is very different, the style is very different. And yeah, the colors are. Oh, we also have a gray horse, and we also have a horse which is either. And the men, they're definitely not kings. Okay, they're definitely some holy men. They have halos around their heads, but they're not kings. And they're not even riding. Yeah, so I hope you enjoy the way the horses are depicted. They're very different. But what is in common with European tradition, the head carriage. They also have their head in this collected position. So probably it indicates control, regardless of which culture you have a horse which has a high head carriage. It indicates that it's a well-bred horse which is controlled, which is trained. And yeah. And that's already not medieval. It's again from Ethiopia, it's from the 18th century, but it's still an illumination. I wanted to show it. We have again three horses, and this time they have something over their necks. Very similar tech. We know that in medieval Europe, the illuminators they were drawing on previous traditions. And this is actually something similar to what is happening in the Eastern Orthodox Church, where when you are drawing icons, even of new saints, you cannot really invent something. You cannot make a portrait. You have to follow the tradition. You have to follow the previous models. Even if, of course, all artists they have different style, but you still have to follow a model. So here, it's quite possible that the artist is model, not necessarily the one I showed on the last slide, but there is some similarity in horse tech. And here we can see these interesting things around the horse's legs. Here it's kind of breast strap or martingale, but it's definitely here it's playing a role. Okay, it's kind of connected. The horses have very fine heads, little ears, so I wouldn't comment on whether they are Arabian horses, but they certainly have features which in later centuries became associated with the Arabian horses. Talking about 19th century and the ideas of what an ideal Arabian horse should look like. Small head, small ears, this fine head, fiery eyes, and so on and so forth. So that's all the pictures which I wanted to show, and some sources for future exploring. Manuscript Miniatures, a great website where you can look at a lot of images. In their collection, they were focusing on horse tech and not on horse tech, but on material culture. Sorry. So this could include horse tech, but this could also include clothes, arms and armor, and so on. Biblissima, it's a French portal. You have to use, I think you have to use French words for searching, and they mainly have French manuscripts. So British Library, the website is back into operation, but it's still impossible to download images. Mandragora, it's another French search engine, which mostly has images from the French National Library, I think exclusively from it. But much easier to navigate than the French National Library. And this Dutch library, whose name I'm not going to pronounce, has a very good collection from what I think like 15th, 16th century mostly, and a lot of religious imagery. And from all of these collections, you can download images either for personal use or for research use. So Don't put them over your t-shirts, but you can use them in your papers, your academic papers, and so on and so forth. Oh, thank you for your attention. And that's another Armenian manuscript um, in the Syriac manuscript from the 15th century. Doesn't have a horse on it or any other equid, but you can help me to identify the animal. And some people thought it's a goat, which I think it's unlikely because in the Bible, goats have these negative associations, and of course, at the Nativity, there were sheep present, not goats, and so Christ is very critical of goats. So this guy seems to be a shepherd. He should be shepherding goats, but this goat has very long horns and doesn't have much fur. Sorry, this sheep has very long horns and doesn't have much fur. I still think it's a special breed of sheep. Maybe it's got shorn. And yeah, whatever. So illumination is simple, but sometimes we find it very hard to guess what the illuminator meant. Okay. Ideas? What it could have been?
Well, thank you. It's hard to tell, but it would have been one of the herding animals. So
Yeah.
it looks more likely to be a sheep. Maybe it's a sheep that has just been shorn.
Yeah.
That's why it's so thin. Don't know, just trying to make things up.
But yeah, some breeds of sheep have horns, which are almost like goats' horns.
Yeah, yeah. They tend
That
to be
was, yeah.
more looped, more rounded, right? They have so curling horns rather than straight horns.
Hmm. Well, the other thing is that like we shouldn't read too much this anatomical and realistic details on some of the illuminations because the Ethiopian image I showed, like 13th century in the previous slides. Let's go back. Uh, yeah, not this one. Oh, yes. Well, I wouldn't say that's an ox, and I wouldn't say that next to it you have a donkey. You can only guess it from the context because this donkey doesn't have long ears. And this animal looks like anything but an ox. They still know that it's a donkey and an ox because they should be there. Um, so sometimes you just assume things. Yes, Rebecca.
Hi there. Thanks both of you for sharing. I'm really enjoying all of your thoughts. I was just interested, this image and the one that preceded it, in both of them, the horses are like temporarily not being ridden. And I'm wondering, are they worshipping in this image? And in the previous image is kind of the opposite happening. I guess I'm kind of interested in what these depictions might suggest about kind of wider attitudes about animals and their ability to kind of perceive the divine. So I kind of was interested in a more general way whether any of the horses in these images can follow the star, like whether any of them are kind of, perceiving anything like that. But in those two images in particular, I'm kind of wondering, yeah, is it meant to be these three horses are obediently kind of worshipping alongside the humans, whereas in the previous one, once the humans have got off, the horses are like having a chat to each other
Yeah,
instead. And yeah, anyway, I'm just kind of speculating, but it's something that I'm sort of interested in, and I didn't know if you had any thoughts on like how far you can take that kind of thing, and yeah, just any insights really.
I would say that the donkey and the ox are definitely worshipping, and we discussed it in not the previous workshop, but the first one, where I was focusing on the donkey. And there are illuminations. There I was looking only at European examples. And some illuminations, the donkey and the ox are really worshipping. They're interested in the baby. There is one image for which I cannot find the source now, but it's Italian Renaissance image where the baby is also touching the donkey. The infant, sorry, infant Jesus. Whether the horses of the Magi are worshipping, that's a good question. I think mostly haven't kind of found any evidence of that, even if they're standing there, they're being held. Usually they're just standing there. Sometimes they're even nibbling the grass. Didn't have any examples of those, but can do it next
Yeah,
time.
I was kind of struck by a lot of the images you shared where it kind of seemed like the horses are obediently doing what the humans are telling them to do, which is kind of it's the reason it struck me. So this whole kind of research. I'm a New Testament scholar most of the time, so I don't really know loads about this. But the reason I got into it was because I was looking at some stuff to do with Saint Paul on the road to Damascus and what's happening to his horses in lots of later art. And in lots of those images, the horses seem to see the vision. And that's kind of what I'm researching is kind of the extent to which like the horses are seeing the vision. And so I was kind of wondering, is this like a wider trope? You know, do you get this sense that horses can see some of the things that humans sometimes are not seeing? But what struck me actually about most of the images you shared is that it felt as though the horses were like just sort of obediently doing what the human was telling them or just kind of mirroring the human. There was one where there were I don't know which one it was, but where like the horses and the humans are mirroring the angles like of the three of them together, and the horses and the humans are all at the same angle. So I guess you get that kind of partnership thing. But yeah, it really didn't seem that it stretched much further, which I'm slightly disappointed about for my own research, but it's also interesting because then why do you get it so much in something like Paul on the road to Damascus, where suddenly you get
Yeah,
these
well,
horses that are
one
perceiving?
possibility is that you could look at the images where the Magi are dismounted.
Mm,
In this case, yeah, somehow I didn't find many of them, but I know that there are quite a few of them.
mm.
They exist, just didn't come across of them across them
Yeah.
this time. You can look at Italian Renaissance images. So
Yeah,
sometimes,
that's what I'm mostly looking at with the Paul stuff. But because my knowledge is like really almost none of any of this, you know, it's kind of I've only just started, so there's so much I'm missing at the moment. So yeah.
yeah, that's definitely a possibility because in other narratives, the horses are definitely sometimes they're depicted as more perceptive than human beings.
Mm,
They're kind of more immediate instruments of divine will.
yeah.
And the Old Testament, we have Balaam and his she donkey, who the she donkey can see what's happening, the stupid man cannot,
It's a
basically.
good story.
Yeah, and the other thing is there has been some research on horse agents in medieval sources, looking at saint narratives of saints, and Marek Robin is the author, and it was published in the very first volume of Chiron. And there she argued that yeah, we're talking about horse agency when things go wrong, when the horse is rowing off its rider and so on and so forth. But actually, horse agency could also be the horse agreeing to do the rider's will, just carrying the rider where it should be carrying him. So that's another way you can the horse can demonstrate its agency. It's like actively deciding to act together with the rider. So that's they are not necessarily doing what their riders are telling them. Maybe they're also interested in this.
Mm, mm,
Maybe you can have something to it because you also contributed to Saints and Sinners on Horseback. That's an interesting book, two-volume book, which could also be helpful. Edited by Miriam, maybe. Miriam is here.
Can you yeah, can you oh yeah, I have that name there. Yeah, thank you. That's really helpful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so there are instances when, for example, the horse is acting like a punisher, like an instrument of divine will, and just punishing the rider um, for doing something wrong, like throwing him off and so on and so forth. So maybe the fact that the horses are carrying their riders and not doing anything stupid means that yeah, they're participating in this. Because yeah, the horse has a just by obeying, the horse can also be making a choice. Whether they're worshipping, that's might be a bit of a stretch, but I
Yeah,
just didn't find any evidence. Donkeys definitely are worshipping and oxen are worshipping. But then you can think about it from a different angle. The first visitors to the Nativity, the first kind of creatures to see infant Jesus were the donkeys, the oxen, the shepherds, and sometimes their sheep. And only then the Magi, who are kind of more elite guys, coming. So that's the message about humility. Um,
and the Bible doesn't say whether the Magi are on horses or on camels or anything like
yeah,
that.
Yeah, this was what started my funny Paul on the road to Damascus thing because of course there is no horse in Paul on the road to Damascus, and so that's kind of why I ended up giving a paper on that for something else about kind of these imaginary horses that Paul was riding but not according to the biblical story. So yeah.
yeah. I was also half expecting to find some camels there riding or some other animals, and I didn't find. I was very happy to find at least pack animals, which are camels and so on and so forth, but I didn't find them riding anything exotic. A bit disappointed. Maybe I
Yeah,
should keep.
if you go into early modern times, you
Yeah.
sometimes say mirroring the different continents, that you have one of the kings riding on a horse from Europe, one of the kings riding on a camel from Asia, and one of the kings riding on an elephant from Africa. So
Yeah, I must have been thinking of that because I was sure that I have seen somewhere other animals.
yeah, but that's early modern times. That's not medieval.
Um,
I
okay.
to my just I mean I don't say this from profound knowledge, just
Yeah.
from my recollection.
Yeah, so maybe in like future years we can look beyond the Middle Ages and yeah,
Yeah,
looks like some postcards and images which are non-medievals.
yeah.
Uh, that's another possibility. So, any more questions, comments? I would be really interested in the research about St. Paul because I was
Mm,
also like interested in this episode, but never had the time to
yeah,
look into it more closely.
yeah. Certainly in medieval literature, there is a lot about horses participating in trickery and deception, uh, together with their owners.
Yes.
Really interesting. Do you have any sort like that you can you do you have anything to suggest that can kick me off? Because when you're like in a brand new area, once you sort of find a few things, you
Well,
kind of
this is my article in Miriam's book
Mhm.
in the first volume of Saints and Sinners. So I'm happy to share it if you don't have access to it.
No, I'll have access to it. That's super helpful. Thank you. Because some of it is just, when the whole thing is just a blank space. So you kind of are
Yeah,
just
yeah,
trying to feel out where to start. Thanks so much.
yeah. No worries.
Um, the other article I was thinking about a few years ago we did this Brill volume Echoing Hooves, and Gavina Shershi contributed an article about unbridled horses in art.
Yeah,
So basically, these are horses which, for some reason, either they break the bridle or the rider is leaving the reins. A lot of them are ridden by saints or characters who are semi-saintly. I don't remember if she was mentioned St. Paul anywhere, but I think she did. So if you remind me, I can send you a copy of that article unless you can have access to it because the volume is like horribly expensive.
hmm.
Um, but
Yeah.
some,
I mean,
yeah,
Giovanna, that was very interesting because she was showing that that imagery, that symbolism, was already in late antiquity. It is not strictly Christian, right?
no,
It is carried over from antiquity.
no, yeah. So yeah, so there are lots of examples of kind of either riders leaving horses to decide for themselves, or the horse is kind of taking control. That's also possible,
Mm.
and showing some agency. So this could also be helpful. Mm,
But
okay.
what you said earlier about the horse being used to foreshadow events and to tell you stories about a main character's horse has certain things happen to the horse, and
Yeah.
that foreshadows what will happen to the character. I mean, this is essentially what Anastasia was writing about. So that as
Yeah.
well you have there.
Yeah, so that's it's just that for the Three Kings, I don't have any indication that something like this is happening. At least I haven't found any evidence for this. If you like look closer, maybe you will find something. So I'm doing my illumination and I chose the Three Kings from the Mappa Mundi. Uh, just I don't know. I like something about the attitude. Um, very expressive. Um, so they're kind of very small. So easier to draw. There was also trying to copy the three from the Italian manuscript. It was such a nightmarish experience. It's like I thought I would never be finished. Um, and I like the Armenian ones. They're kind of cool. Actually, they're all cool. And they make great postcards because my second son, he just took both of these images from the medieval sources, the Italian one and the one from the Mappa Mundi, and he just colored them. He was like, he was really into it. Didn't expect so much enthusiasm from him. So, but yeah, sometimes you never know what people are interested in.
Yeah. But it is. I've been looking at these images and looking at the scheme of one old, one middle, one young, and so the young is without beard. The middle has a
Yeah.
beard but has dark hair, and then the old has white hair.
Yeah. Yes, and they also kind of can have different different beardedness.
Yeah.
So yes, kind of it's representing the different ages of men.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's interesting that in some images they also have these horses which are of different ages because we saw the dark gray horse and the light gray horse.
That's interesting. Yeah.
That was this late image from Savoy manuscript. Somebody wants like, okay, I'll put it online the video so you will see the codes and you can look it up, follow it up later. But yes, any suggestions how you would call the horse colors in this dappled what? Dappled gray, dappled chestnut, and dappled. What do you call the pink color? Because in medieval manuscripts there are lots of pink horses. I'm not quite sure what it is. Um, why they are so much in kind of so fond of pink horses? Must be something about it. Um, don't remember what it's called, but you have your Mustangs in this color sometimes. What is the name for this color? Looks like not really pink, but kind of beige color.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to ask Pamela what
Yeah,
I'm not really a specialist on the colors.
yeah. I
There's
don't
such a
remember sometimes I forget the colors as well.
yeah.
We have a Polish conic in this color as well. So it might have been that. But sometimes it
Mm-hmm.
appears a bit pinkish. The other thing I was thinking about that this depending on what the paint is, you need somebody who is a specialist in medieval paints. That sometimes they get oxidized and the hue
That
changes a little bit.
I was wondering about that. Yes. Yeah.
But
That
it's
that
clear, it's quite clear that it's not going to change from, well, it should be still pinkish, okay?
Yeah. Slightly on the reddish side. Yes.
Yeah, so it's not, and they're different. They're not both chestnuts. They're not both bay horses.
No, that is very clear. Yeah.
Yeah, so they should be different.
For me, the first thought of this pink horse, and I was just trying to find the English word for it, is the roan.
Yeah, so they could be their own.
Yeah, so that's the in my head the
Yeah, so it could be that. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, so that's
and there are
something
of
that,
course a lot of variations of roan also.
yeah. But I've been struggling with these questions for years, and nobody has really answered what it is. How to read these colors. Some years ago, one researcher who was arguing that they are not realistic colors because they have solid browns and there are no solid brown horses. Uh,
Mm.
I still
Yeah.
think that they should be representative in some way. So that could be another question. What, how they're depicted in manuscripts, because we don't know which colors, mm, which horse colors really existed in the Middle Ages. There has been some research into genetics, and yeah, basically they showed that mostly the same colors were there. Um, in this book, The Medieval Warhorse by the Exeter team, they also argued that kind of colored horses, not solid colors, were less common in the Middle Ages because they were not popular. They're talking about medieval Europe, I would say, because in other countries they still existed and they must have been in the genetic pool because otherwise they wouldn't reemerge.
Yeah.
Um, and then I wouldn't say that they weren't necessarily popular. Maybe they were just rare because they're special. Um, but who knows?
Yeah. I mean, strawberry roan is a good get. I think it's pretty close
Yeah.
to sort of
If there could be somebody who is doing analysis of colors in the
chestnut base with white hairs would give sort of a pinkish appearance.
yeah, that's another possibility, yes. Yeah, so it could be different. Um, the next question if they would ever have this dappled appearance or if it's fantastic. Because dappled
Yeah,
bay
I mean
definitely.
that's the joke of the dappled one, because then strawberry roan and dappled is interesting. But again, maybe it's just copying because they like dappled horses, and so they added the color. I just speculating.
Yeah, but the
Don't
dappled
know.
chestnut, um, or dappled bay, they would exist. And
Definitely, yeah.
one of my horses, she has this dappled appearance in spring when she's changing coat, and actually her son has the same. Um, I don't know if
Yeah,
it's like,
it's the same for my chestnut mare. She
yeah.
also has dapples come out some time of the year in autumn and in spring, I think. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I've read a little bit on this, and apparently it's one possibility is that they really have all the vitamins and minerals they need, and the other is that they might have excess iron and excess calcium, which is possible for us because we have excess calcium in water and quite high concentration of iron. So this may not necessarily be good for the horse, but it definitely means that they're not lacking in anything. They have too much, but they're not lacking. So having dapples in this case would indicate that the horse is really eating well. Um, Um, so that's any ideas about the clothes, the color scheme of the clothes of the Magi? The, I think it's just kind of uh, to make them look different from each other, or for visual effect, or do you think there will be some significance? I just don't know. It's um, but they're definitely visually pleasing set of guys.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. So, and again, from this miniature, it's a bit hard to see, but the head carriage on these horses, they are all in control, but they're not really overbent. Okay, the middle
Mhm.
one is a bit overbent, and um, the gray one. The other ones, it's very hard to see. It's like so it was an article by Jennifer Jobs who looked at the images, and she argued that it was roughly from the 12th century onwards that this head carriage where the horse is overbent behind the vertical gets more popular, more common. Um, so this is not necessarily good for the horse. It clearly indicates that there is a lot of control involved. And one of the Hippiatric treatises of the time, Jordanus Rufus, who also discusses horse training, he says at some point that you should, when your horse is kind of already well trained, it's not a youngster anymore. What you can do is, as you gallop, you put the horse's head into the position like a ram's head, and then you kind of make it stop so it's looking under its feet. Basically, this would be hyperflexion, overflexion. And this way you kind of can, the horse is more sure-footed, sees its way better, but also has fewer options for running away with the rider. Um, so that's kind of the rationale, and it coincides with this illumination with the vogue for horses which are overbent. Um, seems to have some practical function. Yeah, definitely. If you have a horse in this position, then the rider is clearly in control of it. Not, and it's the opposite of the horse which is in control itself, which has the reins loose and so on and so forth. Um, so here the three kings are definitely in control of their journey. They're doing they know what they want to do. They're not kind of putting it to their horses. So one of the sources Gavina Shashi was analyzing, it was a legend of kind of not really Sir Gawain, but a related character who appears like a saintly version of Sir Gawain, and at some point he just lets go of the rein. Yeah, on he goes, and the horse is taking him to a place where I think this is the grave of a holy man or something. But the idea is that it's the horse who knows the way; it's not him who knows the way. This way is kind of obedience to God's will and not trusting in your own knowledge, not trusting in what you know, but how much more humble you can be if you trust in your horse. Yeah, but these guys know what they're doing, and you can also see from their gestures that they're discussing it. They're discussing their way, so that's also very clear. Know where they want to get. So in medieval illumination, gesture was one way of showing emotion. They're very expressive with their hands. So any more points here?
I wanted to ask about, Anastasia, about ambling.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's like a very known topic and a lot discussed, but I'm not too aware. Like why is ambling depicted so often, and what does it actually show, or why it was important to show horses ambling? Was it just so common, or did it have some kind of?
Eva, do you know what ambling gait is?
Yes.
Okay, so ambling it occurs naturally in some horses. It can also be taught, and there is evidence in the Middle Ages people both selected horses which ambled, but they also taught horses to amble. There is a French saying, uh, something about ambling hoops, something about training a horse with ambling hoops. It's like a person who is getting a habit of doing something. So basically,
Uh-huh.
indicates that they could train horses the way, for example, I think the Tennessee walking horses gets trained if it doesn't have the ambling gene.
Okay. Okay, so it is possible to train it even if it
Possible
doesn't
to
have the
train.
gene.
It's not necessarily good for the horse because the training, as it's conducted today, it would be considered okay, not quite horse abuse, but not always kind of horse friendly. But
Mm-hmm.
because it's so comfortable to sit to this gait,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
don't need to rise as in trot.
Mm-hmm.
Having a horse which ambles, it's a great asset. You can travel comfortably for long distances, which is why the wife of Bath, who has the means, and probably she's got experience of this kind of pilgrimage, she chooses an ambler. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and but amblers weren't, as far as I know, they weren't war horses. So basically, if you see an ambler, it means the rider isn't going to war. It's on this horse.
Uh-huh.
It, they're just using this horse for traveling.
So
Um,
is that the meaning also in some of those depictions, or?
well, since amblers were expensive, well,
Mm-hmm.
definitely they're having a peaceful journey. They are not depicted on war horses. They shouldn't be depicted on war horses. And in the Middle Ages, even those who rode to wars, they could be riding a kind of a comfortable horse, and the war horse would be led from it, if they could afford it, of course. They could afford two, three horses, and so on. But yeah, I think here the message is that they're having a peaceful mission. So
Mm-hmm.
on the other hand,
Yeah.
they could have a war horse somewhere to indicate they are kings. So these are possible different messages. Jurg, did you want to say something?
No, I absolutely agree. The fact that they're rambling shows that they're traveling and that they are high class riders, because an ambling horse was an expensive horse.
Yeah,
So yeah, I think it does pay to look at depictions of horses to check whether they are represented as ambling or have diagonal strides. And so many times uh, there is a difference, even if you look at let's say the Codex Manesse and the various depictions where the man is depicted on a war horse and it is not ambling, whereas his uh, the woman at his side is depicted on a slightly smaller horse and it is ambling. So I think there is a lot to be read out of these depictions by looking at the stride and whether it is diagonal or lateral.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's not always the case, but if you kind of look into it, and especially if you look at one manuscript and see if the illuminator has a kind of made a deliberate effort to depict it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, here you can just look at these three horses. The one in the back, the back one is clearly not ambling. The
Mm-hmm.
one in the front is ambling, right? So
Yeah,
yeah,
that.
they have made a choice here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what
The
I noticed
middle,
also in some of the previous images also, that
yeah,
some were ambling, some not, and even the mules were ambling.
yeah,
But the
yeah,
mules could gamble just as well. They could also get the
yeah,
ambling gene.
Okay.
yeah.
And of course, they could also be trained. I have never ridden a mule, but I understand that they have more comfortable gaits, maybe.
I
Mhm.
mean, some trots can be sat. Some trots are very comfortable. Some of our horses have trots that are quite comfortable. You don't have to post them. So it makes no difference. But given the choice between a trot and an amble, you'd want an amble.
Well, what I've noticed with our Polish Konik, she got very comfortable trot, and my boy saying, "Oh, we cannot post to it." But if she's
Mm,
going very fast, you can very easily post it, and it gets very uncomfortable to sit to.
mm,
Uh,
mm,
for ambling, an ambler could be going very fast. It's almost like a cantering speed, and
yeah,
you can still sit to it very easily.
yeah,
So that's clearly an asset if you're traveling, um, especially if you have to travel a long way.
yeah. And that's it. It's a traveling gait. It's a
Mm.
fast. It's a medium speed traveling gait. Obviously, gallop is faster, and gallop is usually also quite comfortable to sit. But it's a horse cannot
It's
gallop
exactly for the horse.
for extended periods, right? Whereas in amble, a horse can sit sustained.
Yeah, and there has been some research about hackneys for England, and John Clark suggested that hackneys were used at some point to for leading other horses from them, like more valuable horses, and that many hackneys they would be ambling hackneys. Sometimes it's specified that this hackney is an ambling hackney. So whether all of them were amblers or just those special hackneys were amblers, it's open question, but another possibility, you can also lead a different horse from it. Um, for example, your valuable war horse. Um, and then you can travel very comfortably, and yeah, the war horse doesn't get tired. So that's it. My things are kind of finished, ready to go to the Holy Land or somewhere, and I'll add Dapples later on, I guess. Um, I'm just thinking that adding those Dapples would be quite a lot of work. So illuminators should be paid extra if they were to depict bedappled horses. Um, and that's another possibility if somebody went to the extent to this effort of depicting this kind of circular points on a horse, then it's going to mean something. Because I'm just thinking that it would be a hell of a work. um,
But talking about colors of the horses, are there also depictions with horses with white markings?
uh, like, what do you mean by what?
Like
Color?
on, yeah, on legs or on face, like white
Uh,
things.
Not really for Europe. I haven't seen them, but
Mm.
yeah, this last image from what was it? From the 18th century. They definitely had white-faced horses, but for medieval,
Mhm.
I've never seen, for example, here they are solid colors.
Yeah, yeah, because
Um,
this is also quite interesting. I think that there are
I haven't
no
seen
white socks or anything on horses.
not for Europe, but for places like India, for example, they would have it depicted. Here,
Mm-hmm.
black horse with white face and brown horse with white face.
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
In Europe, they just didn't do it. And yeah, that's where we have art which isn't realistic, which is formulaic. They're just doing it the same way for all horses. Because clearly there would be horses with markings. They are, for example, noticed in documents, in these
Mm-hmm.
documents for which registered horses for army service and like restauratio quorum. When horses lost in battle, the owners could claim the expenses back. Um, they could kind of mention not leg markings, but face markings could be mentioned. And also like some other administrative documents, they would mention these markings. It's just um, I have no idea why they never depict it in manuscripts.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason they don't. Um, it's not always realism.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Even in like bestiary books, they where they could kind of concentrate on the animals and depict horses, donkeys, mules. They don't depict them with markings. Um, but they do mention markings in horse color hierarchies sometimes. So they were in Hippocratic treatises, sometimes copied as separate items in miscellaneous manuscripts, the hierarchies for different colors. So usually the top one is brown bay with a white mark or without. Um, and then silver gray and dappled gray are also ranked high. And very interesting case, but a black horse is sometimes it's described as a horse which has a devil in it. So if you get a black horse, just sell it as fast as you can because it's going to kill you. But if this black horse has a white mark, um, it's a good horse. Get it by all means. It's a very good color. And another interesting thing. That there was one Middle English Hippocratic treatise, basically a book of horse recipes, and it's got a recipe how to make a white mark on a horse. So I'm not necessarily linking the two things. It could have been a way of branding your horse, but it could also be a way of enhancing your horse's appearance. So instead of undesirable black horse, which is like the devil, you get a very desirable black horse with a white mark, which is fashionable. You're going to get a lot of money for it. Um, and the medicine, it involved quicksilver. So it would actually burn the horse's hair, maybe even the skin, and then the hair would grow back and it would be white. So it would probably work, but not something I would try on my horses.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in this case, and they also mention legs, so white legs, and there was a definite number of white legs you want to have on your horse, but I don't remember exactly, and sometimes it changes. One source is saying one thing, the other source is saying the other thing, but four white legs wasn't a popular choice. It was supposed to be bad, and also depending like whether you have the front white leg or the back white leg, again, it could be different.
Mm-hmm.
But because it differs across manuscripts, I don't think there was a set tradition. People are just copying it in different ways, and maybe they didn't even always follow it. I think there is an English saying about how many white legs you want in a horse even today. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so um, definitely people took note of markings.
Mm-hmm.
And there are two narratives in which a black horse appears, and apparently it has no markings because in both cases it acts like the devil. One is the Percival romance, not the Percival romance, but Castle St. Graal. And Percival is lost on an island, his horse is killed, and then out of the blue a lady appears, and it's leading a huge black horse. And yeah, Percival is he's desperate to get out of there and to go on his quest. So he takes this horse without further questions. The horse turns out to be the devil and almost throws him into a lake. So it could be a kelpie just as well. But luckily he makes the sign of the cross. The horse vanishes and he lands on a desert island. So yeah, that's... And one thing that the romance mentioned is that Percival had instant dislike for this horse. He just, yeah, he looked at it and he didn't like it. Probably he should have followed his gut instinct and yeah, don't mount the horse you don't like. The other episode is one of the accounts about Joan of Arc. At some point in her kind of travels, she was presented with a black horse, and the black horse it was kind of misbehaving. So she made the sign of the cross, and miraculously the horse started to behave very well. Here you can have realistic explanations that Joan of Arc was worried. She made the sign of the cross, and then she wasn't worried any longer, and the horse just reacted to this change of her mood. But the fact that it's a black horse, it indicates that something is going on here. The black horse is the devil, and she just um, kind of managed to overcome this devil. But it's supposed to be one of the eyewitness accounts, so you can have both realism and this symbolism going on.
Mhm.
So yeah. Um, give me a second. Somebody was saying something in the chat. Okay, strawberry roan. Yeah. Okay, so I'm switching the cameras, and people don't have any more questions. Then I could probably stop sharing. Um, it's almost 11 o'clock in Latvian. I think in Estonia it's the same time.
Yes.
You can call it a day or a night. Thank you for coming. If you have ideas for future talks, for future workshops, I think it's nice to meet in December and look at some images and draw something
Yeah.
and make it an annual tradition. We can all look at St. Paul next year. Don't need to kind of uh, focus on the nativity all the time. We can look at other images as well. And then the next two seminars will be kind of more history-based, history plus practice, but I'm going to make announcements. So stop recording.